Hello and welcome to Self Power Now, where empowering women share their stories and advice about life, work, happiness, love, and success. I'm your host, Debbie Giussoni, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. So sit back and enjoy the show. I'm so excited to have Dr. Louann Brizendine here on our show today. Louann is a professor of clinical psychiatry and the founder of UCSF's Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic. But you might know her for her best-selling books that were New York Times bestsellers, The Female Brain and the Male Brain. Her newest book, which is what we'll be talking about today, that I absolutely love, is called, and I'm going to hold it up here because it's so beautiful. Yay. Oh, and she's going to hold it up too. It's called The Upgrade: How the Female Brain Gets Stronger and Better in Midlife and Beyond. Amen to that. Welcome, Louann. I love the title of the book.
Oh, thank
and
you
I want to say
me.
that, oh my gosh, thank you for being here. I loved reading this book, and it's perfect timing for me and what I'm going through in my own life. And I know a lot of our listeners are in that. Well, first of all, most of them are women, and most of them are in that period of life as well. And I just loved your positive approach. I'm all about positivity and happiness. And I loved your positive approach about women over 40 and what's going on in your body and how you're feeling. And what I especially loved is how you combine and mix both neuroscience with some of the soft skills that I talk about all the time, like meditation and feeling happier and exercise and things like that. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to talking to your audience. It's like
Yeah.
us women, we got to stick together to get through the upgrade here.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Let's get right into the book then, Louann. You say that there is a time after 40, and we're not going to use the M word, right? And you call it the upgrade. We're not going to use the pre-M, the post-M, or the M word. Why don't you explain first what you mean by an upgrade?
So let's just, the reason that I did not use those words, the perimenopause, menopause words, is because those are medical terminology for a very specific kind of diagnosis of a deficit. And that doesn't capture the whole women. I mean, the stuff we go through between 40 and 50, which I call the transition, and then the upgrade, which happens in your late 40s and early 50s to your mid 50s, those are like the whole woman experience. It's our brains, it's our bodies, it's
Yeah.
our mind, it's our lives, it's our relationships, it's our kids, it's our family. There's so much else that goes on, and this book covers all of that, not just a single small diagnosis. So that's the reason I use that. And the cool thing is, ladies, the good news is you're going to have an upgrade to look forward to if you're not there already.
I love that. And you actually wrote the book because of some of your own personal experiences, correct?
Yes. Okay. So a lot of people probably have read The Female Brain. So that was, I started from the moment of conception and then took it all the way to the chapter 7 in that book is called The Mature Female Brain. So I was not quite, I was like I started writing that book. It came out when I was like I think 52 or 53. And I've been writing it during my late 40s and 50s. So I was right in that crossover, but I didn't think I would write another book because I felt like I had captured it all. But hello, years later, I realized, oh my goodness, I had to add the follow-on to that book because I've had so many experiences of my own I want to share, which is basically the excitement of being in the upgrade, being able to not have that being jerked around by the monthly ebb and flow of the PMS and the cycle and the bleeding and all the stuff that goes on with the fertility dance that we deal with most our lives from age 12 on. So I thought,
Yes.
oh, I have to share my experience and then do a deep dive into, all of the brain and neurochemicals and hormone stuff to teach women about how exciting it is to get to this other place and have a different set of expectations, ladies. Ladies, start your engines.
Well, personally, what were some of your ups and downs that said, "Hey, I got to tell people about this."
Well, I was a person, I mean, one of the reasons I started the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic, of course, was because I had a lot of PMS myself. I mean, I had a lot of the hormonal mood
Mm.
fluctuations during the cycle. And so I knew it intimately, as well as I was a neuroscientist. I went to UC Berkeley and did my neurobiology as an undergraduate before I went to Yale, did my medical school there. And when I learned that during my psychiatry rotation, that there was a 2-to-1 ratio of depression in women, but the ratio during childhood between male and female is 1-to-1, and it doesn't explode into that 2-to-1 until after 12, 13, 14 for girls. And
Well, that's
there
when all
weren't
the
that,
social norms, right, start
yeah,
kicking in as well. Yeah.
everything starts
Yeah.
to happen at that early, but the menstrual cycle starts then. And of course, most of the people in my field or whatever, most of the professors were mostly male in those days. There were a few females around in those days, but it was mostly male. I'm thinking like, what are we missing here? And of course, having been at UC Berkeley in the feminist movement, and that kind of, it's like everyone says, well, oh, of course, it's the patriarchy keeping us women down that makes us have all this, more depression or anxiety. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a complex issue, right? It's not like, but that's not a hormonal thing. So the hormonal thing that happens at that stage where we get the increased anxiety and depression happens to be the menstrual cycle, the hormones, the fertility cycle starts then. And it starts to, let's do a little nerd out here. Okay, we'll do a little nerdy thing.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll do a little deep dive into the menstrual cycle. Remember, day one of the cycle is bleeding. Day one of bleeding is called day one. And then you march forward to about day 10 or 11. And that's when the estrogen level from the follicle is going up, highest. And we women have our brains, there's all kinds of connections that start to go from one neuron to another in our brains during that time. That it's like throwing fertilizer, growth. Estrogen is a growth hormone for these connections, and all these connections grow in our brain during that time. And the peak of the estrogen makes us more verbal and makes us more flirty. They find that women a little more makeup on those days. We dress a little sexier on those days. We sway
Oh,
our
I didn't realize that.
we
That's
sway our
interesting.
hips more during
Huh.
that days 10 to 14. And we are, even the tone of our voice goes up at that stage
Huh.
as well. So it's all about our job. Mother Nature made our job as women is to go out there trying to attract the best sperm. We're out there trying to find the best sperm during those days
Well,
before we
isn't
have
that in that,
ovulation.
that exists in the whole animal kingdom. I mean, if you just
Of
watch
course,
any animal show,
yeah,
it's all about the mating process and attracting
exactly.
the most virile, healthy male so that you can procreate, right? So
Exactly,
we're no
Debbie.
different.
We're
Yeah.
no different. I'm just saying that, it's like, so the purpose of a hormone is to cause a behavior. The purpose of a hormone is to cause a behavior. Like the hunger hormones make us want to eat, they make
Yes.
our stomach growl, make us want to eat food. The sex hormones make us want to have sex. So, the purpose of hormones is like it's that's a basic tenet of hormones. Purpose is to cause us humans to have a behavior. And the hormones that go way up the estrogen before ovulation make us want to seek out the best sperm. And the way that we women do it is our attractiveness, our flirtation. So I give you that little snapshot into the menstrual cycle in that if you reflect on yourself, you go like, oh, wow, maybe I do that. Maybe I do, and
So then
it's
that makes so much sense because then I hear a lot of women feeling almost like, once they get into premenopause or menopause that they almost feel invisible after, they feel like, hey, we don't matter anymore. And a lot of it is because they feel like they're not attracting the opposite sex, or, maybe they want to attract the same sex, whatever the orientation is. And we feel like we almost need to be I want to say like apologetic about our aging body and looks, and that
Yes.
like we want to take a step back and shrivel, instead of what you're talking about is like go out in the world and be yourself. But it
Yes.
makes sense when you're talking about these hormones, because those hormones are specifically designed to make us feel a certain way, and then when they start diminishing, you don't feel that way anymore.
Exactly. So, you're going into an upgrade, so, and the reason, so that feeling, anytime we go through a major change in our lives, change our jobs, change our relationships, change our way, we, it takes, almost like you get hit by a stun gun a little bit. You're just not, it's almost like that, like you say, at that stage, you're so used to like, um, trying to attract the opposite sex at certain, it's like you're so geared, your whole nervous system is all geared to do that, and all of a sudden you're not being pushed to do that by your hormones. So it takes a little time to get used to it. That I use that phrase, biology is destiny, unless you know what it's doing to you.
Yeah, I have a funny story. A friend of mine was out with her teenage daughter at a store, and my friend is just a beautiful, beautiful woman. And I'm sure throughout her life has had, lots of attention from men. And she was at a store, and whoever was checking them out, the guy was kind of flirting or whatnot. And it took her about like 10 minutes to realize he's not flirting with her, that he's flirting with the daughter. And she's like, oh, that was my defining moment.
Exactly. I know. I talk
Okay,
about a story like that in the book too.
I'm
Like,
not the same person I was. And, you've got to kind of give it up to the younger.
yeah, you give it up, and you give up to the younger, and once you realize that, then you then you become really chill and cool with that in a certain way, because it opens up your dance card in your brain to do all kinds of other things. And then, of course, let's go back just to the menstrual cycle for a minute. Remember that after I tell my graduate students, the female graduate students, they should, because you become more verbal and your words come out easier during days 10, 11, 12. You should schedule your oral exams on those days for your graduate work.
Oh my
The
gosh,
days
that's
before
great.
ovulation. But
That's great.
anyway, they always used to get a laugh out of that. Then you go into remember the 2 or 3 days before you start your period, that PMS stage, where you're getting,
Hmm.
and remember the progesterone has gone up, and what's happening is it's crashing down right before your period. So the thing that triggers your period is that the progesterone starts to just completely crash down at that
Mm.
stage. It
Mm.
makes you irritable. We call it in my clinic the crying over dog food commercials line. You could
Well,
dry the dog
I
with a
still
hat.
cry at dog stuff, and, I'm
I know.
that.
It's emotion. So the emotionality and the irritability and easy to anger, your everything is like fingernails on the chalkboard. The thing your husband, your partner does that you don't like, maybe you can tolerate that 27 days of the month, but that day, it's like,
It
you
gets
can't,
amplified. It gets
yeah, it gets
everything
really
in it. So
amplified.
what
And
happens then when all of that stops? What
so
happens in the upgrade?
the cool thing is that is, and then all the bleeding starts, whatever that goes, whatever. That's over, ladies.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hip hip
yeah,
hooray.
yahoo! You don't go down that aisle in the grocery store anymore. I say, unless your son is bringing home their girlfriend or something, but you don't do that. Anyway, there's no bleeding. There's not the PMS. There's not this up and down. And you have this incredible freedom in your brain circuits, because you don't have these hormones pushing you to do a behavior. You're not out there. I mean, there's so much of our culture tells us we're supposed to be searching out the best sperm. I mean, our culture tells us we're supposed to be out there looking for men at
Mm.
all times. And we're so used to that. It's hard in our nervous system to let that go. But once you start to let that go, you have
You
this opening,
relax. Yeah, you
you get the
relax.
opening up for your own authenticity, to be able to stand, I say, to stand in the center stage of your life, in the spotlight of your authenticity. And it feels so good.
And when you feel like that inside, you project. And I mean, you've met people and I've met people, when you meet them, it doesn't matter how old they are, they project this light because they have this inner light. and they're comfortable with their bodies, they're comfortable with themselves, they're comfortable with their looks, and they attract people naturally. They attract all kinds of people, and they attract love, and they attract peace, and they attract happiness because of who they are and how comfortable they are in themselves, right?
Absolutely. And so,
Yeah.
ladies, I mean, it's so wonderful when these other things fall away. And I analogize it to, like, if you're walking down a path and you're really close to the tide line on the shore, right?
Mm.
Like you are during the fertility years, and the tide comes in and it washes all these brain circuits away, and the tide goes out and they all then rebuild and and you get this washing away of your path and then recreating your path and washing. Well, in the upgrade, you're walking on a path slightly higher up, but away from the shoreline, and you're standing on stable ground. You're standing firmer and you can see further ahead, more clarity. You're not getting this washing away and rebuilding and washing away and rebuilding of the circuits that
You
leads.
finally arrived. But for some women, there's a lot of issues, right? Because there's all kinds of symptoms. And you talk in your book a lot about hormone replacement. Let's take a look at that and what you recommend for that, what kinds of forms. And there are so many misconceptions about that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, the thing is if you take, so let's just following on, it's like, if you have had your menstrual cycle all these years, and then all of a sudden those hormones and those waves of hormones aren't there anymore, and you decide to take HRT, you're not going to be given it in those kinds of waves. So you're not going to be just continuing what the past was. So
Right.
just let's be clear about that. You're going to be on a stable, same dose every day going on. And what we've discovered, is the 20th anniversary of the Women's Health Initiative from back then, which was a very flawed study that came out that said all these awful things happen. You might get more breast cancer, you get more this and that. Actually, they found out that that's not true, because it was a very messed up study. But what happens is abruptly, like something like about 35% of women were taking HRT during the weeks that study came out, and within 2 years it was down to 5%.
When
So
did that study came out? When was that? The 80s?
2002,
Oh, 2002.
2002.
Okay. So
So
that
that's a
really
long
tipped the
time ago.
scales.
It
Yeah.
tipped the scales, and so I feel very badly. A lot of the women my age who didn't get on HRT, they're having terrible osteoporosis.
Hmm.
Their bones are becoming brittle, and they're having breakages, and it's like, and not to mention what's going on with their brain circuits. And it's just that there's so the answer is you can take HRT for five years during this transition phase to try and support your nervous system, your saliva, your teeth, your bowels, your
Hmm.
heart, your brain. All of these things rely on estrogen, and you
And then should you get off of them after
well,
5 years?
now that, well, actually they've expanded that to 10 years. So
Hmm.
for 10 years, you can really kind of stave off a lot of diseases of diseases of aging in women are a little different than men, because men have their testosterone. Remember, the men are their testicles are gonna make testosterone until the day they die, even after they die.
I know. That's right.
The
Men in their
brain's still
90s
making
are having
testosterone.
babies. It's just
Yeah,
with
it's
younger
like,
women. So
yeah.
when you're talking about hormone replacement, you're talking about estrogen, progesterone, in some cases testosterone, right? Those are the three
Those
hormones,
are the
correct?
three that we tend
And
to
those
use.
can be oral, they could be patches, they
Or
could be
DHEA is
uh,
another one that a lot of women get put on too, which is an androgen that also helps the libido and helps.
right. And
Yeah.
is there anything more natural, like you hear the term bioidentical versus manufactured?
It's so
What does
terrible,
that mean?
all these words, because it's like they got everybody's head messed up with all these words. The only thing that we're
Educate us, please.
bioidentical. Okay, bioidentical just means that it's the same chemical that your body makes.
Yeah.
And almost all of the HRT out there that's made today, they used to use Premarin, right? It came from horses, and they made it,
Yeah.
or they synthesized it from horse urine before they learned how to make it in the lab. So it
Hmm.
was not a nefarious thing. They just did that. And and the horses have a similar estrogen to what we have too. It's a little bit, there's some that are a little bit different. I actually have some that actually
That's
make,
interesting.
some that actually
That's an
make your,
interesting
exactly,
tidbit right there.
some actually make your brain better, they found in
Yeah.
in the Premarin. But at any rate, now they make, estradiol that's the same as they in the patches and the pills. So what you're going to be given by most of your doctors these days, the
And creams. I know some people who even do
gel,
what they call pellets underneath the skin,
and
right?
pellets. So any of those
Yeah.
things, basically, they are all bioidentical because they are identical to what your body is making. So that's all that bioidentical means.
And in the book, you talk about when the best time to start all that is, and when is that?
So, I break that transition phase down into little chunks, right? Because the early transition starts between like age, maybe like 38 to 42. And then the middle transition can be like 42 to maybe like 46 or 47.
But you wouldn't be taking hormones that early, right?
And no, so but this is as your ovaries are starting to make less and less estrogen, and your body is basically having a shortening of your menstrual cycle, so that you end up, that's when you start to have trouble like cooling down after exercise, as it's one, or you're having some waking up and throwing the covers off at night. That's the early signal that your estrogen is getting lower. And middle transition, you can be like, you can be sweating, and the brain has this little thermostat that is basically really important for estrogen sets your thermostat. So for example, if you're in a room with a bunch of people and you're the only one in your transition phase, and they change the temperature in the room by 10 degrees up, right? 10 degrees up, all of a sudden, everybody's going to be a little bit warm. They'll be taking off layers and stuff.
Right.
But if you're in a woman in the transition stage, between like age 40 and 50, and they change the temperature by 1 or 2 degrees, most other people aren't going to be hot, but you may be triggering your thermostat in your brain to say it's hot and make you sweat. So that's what happens, is that during this time with the estrogen changing so much, the thermostat for sweating changes. But the sweating thermostat changes, and you're sweating, taking thing up, and everybody's kind of looking at you.
Oh yeah, we've all had that experience.
We've all had that experience. So the estrogen, so a lot of women might want to start taking, some of them, it depends on how badly. So if you're having 30 or 40 of these a day and you're doing board meetings, it's individual what you need. So you can
start taking that even before you go through the flow transition.
So some women, we add a little tiny supplement, even though they're still having periods, towards that.
But also you need to take it with progesterone, right?
Yeah, if you're not still bleeding and stuff. And so the thing, a lot of women will start to get heavy bleeding because you get your cycle. See, when your ovary stops ovulating eggs, that little sac that the ovary comes out of is the little glands in that sac make your progesterone for use. But if you're not ovulating, and women start to have 2 or 3 or 4 periods a year that no ovulation happens. So if you skip that and there's no ovulation that period, there's no progesterone, then you don't shed as much of your lining that month for your period. And then it kind of stacks up. It's called a loop period. Then you're leapfrogging into the next period before the other one really has cleaned out the uterus. And so the progesterone, so it's a little bit sketchy. That's when a lot of women get that stuff called, technical word called flooding.
Yes. Oh, that sounds really technical.
Yeah.
So basically you can get started on these early, and I think you said in your book there's some research that shows before 60 is probably a good, it has the best effects on your long-term health.
So the parameters that most doctors have given is that if you don't start on HRT before 60, they don't want to start you on it because you've missed your window of opportunity. So ladies, your window of opportunity is some place between the ages, really, I would say, of
45 to 55. Yeah.
That window is when you want to start it.
And you can continue after 60, right?
Yeah.
So you started at 55 or whatever.
A lot of women continue on.
So you're saying like 10 years is a good amount now.
It's a good benchmark to have it then reassessed.
Reassessed.
A lot of women will decide to continue on. Some women will taper off. I have a girlfriend who does a lot of it in San Francisco, and I turn to her and basically will measure my estrogen level. I was on the patch for a lot of years and
Mm-hmm.
still am, but she measured mine and my estrogen level on the patch. I was taking a pretty low dose of the patch, was pretty low. She says, if you're going to bother to take this, you might as well take it, and so you get a blood level at the level that's healthy for you. So we increased my patch dosage a few years ago, and it's interesting. Over the last, I had my bone density done. My bone density went up 2.8%, which is actually a lot of increase for bone density. So
That's great.
the estrogen will make your bone density go up. So there's a lot of, the
And
finding.
what about testosterone? Do you recommend that? I mean, libido
So
definitely goes down at a certain point
so
as
I've
well.
used testosterone for a lot of women because your libido, I mean, if you think about Mother Nature, right? If you're not going to be out there looking for the best sperm,
Right. Why do you need libido?
I mean, it's like really for you, it's not necessary. For most women, it's not them that they're doing it for. I mean, maybe some there are, but for at least 9 out of 10 of the women I see, it's like my husband, blah blah blah. It's like
Well,
he
you want to have a healthy marriage,
you
right?
want a
And
healthy marriage, you want to have a relationship, you want to you want to be interested in having sex. So if you're completely disinterested, whatever. So estrogen, when you keep your estrogen, so your vagina needs estrogen to stay healthy enough to have intercourse. So let's just say it like it is.
Mhm.
So, and if you don't have some
So it
estrogen,
doesn't feel like the Sahara desert down there.
you'll be go numb, you'll go numb down there, and you'll feel like sandpaper, and you'll tear, and you'll have bleeding, and you can get vaginal infections and stuff if so
Mm,
there's a whole lot of vaginal help where you can use, you can use estrogen plungers. A lot of people use a little estrogen cream in their
creams.
vagina. It
Yeah.
helps a lot. So
Yeah.
I really encourage women to, so if you get that set first, ladies, that first, and you have completely no interest, like I call it the don't touch me syndrome, like just get away from me. Like we say, like, get that thing away from me.
I'm sure the husbands love to hear that, or
Get that
partners.
thing
Get
away
that
from
thing
me.
away
Or
from
if
me. I
you're
love
not
it.
saying it, if you're not saying it, then you're thinking it, or your body's reacting like, ew, get that thing away from me.
Well,
If
when
you're
there's no desire, right? Exactly.
when there's no desire, it's just like it's not when it's gone, it's gone. So so yes, a lot of ladies will want to use testosterone. And the women that I find that women, you can use testosterone gels, you can use the pills, you can use it. And I find some women, you have to find the right dosage, because if you take a little too much, you'll get this feeling like out of my way, MF. You get this kind of real masculine 0 to 60. Plus you can get acne and BO, or, whatever.
Will you start losing your hair or gaining
Yeah,
your hair?
yeah. Some women lose their hair. The testosterone, your hairdresser will tell you. I remember I started using some of it a little bit more, like about a year ago, and my hairdresser was going like, you're thinning out back here so much, whatever. He said, are you doing anything different? And I was thinking, what? But like, oh, the testosterone is making
Yeah,
my.
that's the
I was
only thing with
yeah,
these,
I was getting a little ball. I was a bald spot on the back. Or I was getting like the, I had such thick hair that it was like
male
I was
pattern baldness in
noticeable.
the
It's like
back of
male
your
pattern
head.
baldness in the back of my head. So yeah, testosterone will give you the
Well,
male
that's the
pattern bald.
problem. I mean, everything has a little bit of side effect.
Downside.
What about if you have a history of breast cancer in your family? Should you even attempt to do the
Okay,
estrogen?
so that's important because what we do is like we basically we run people's genes. We do the genetic
Hmm.
profile on you.
Hmm.
Basically, the 23andMe is not good enough because it does
Yeah.
three. There's a whole bunch of breast cancer genes that run in families, and 23andMe only looks for 3 of them, so you can miss a
Mm.
whole bunch of them. So it's a good preliminary screen, but you really probably need to do the real one. And doctors will do that for you before they start you on HRT.
Hmm.
So you want to make sure that you're not. Most women already know that they had a grandmother, a mother, a sister. You have it in your family.
Right, right.
So those women should not take HRT
Hmm. Okay. That's good.
unless they have their breasts removed. If you have the real thing, then people have the surgery and stuff, and they can then they put the. I have a stepdaughter who had it anyway. They just put the estrogen patch on you right after your surgery, and you get to take that for the rest of your life. So
Yeah,
at any
yeah.
rate, each person is such an individual, but yeah. So HRT is something that finding a doctor, it's hard because
Yes.
ladies, you got to remember, like
It's not your everyday gyno for sure.
OBGYN residencies.
Yeah.
Only 20% of them have even a single lecture on HRT.
Mm.
Do I say that again? Only 20% of the residency programs give their OBGYN residents a lecture on HRT.
That's sort of like the whole thing with nutrition, doctors and nutrition. You know, they don't know how to heal your body through food, or they don't
But it's
know
even
that. Yeah.
worse because at least with nutrition, you have people called nutritionists that do.
Right.
But with hormones, it's hard because you don't have anybody else that can prescribe it. It's not like you have a group of, I mean, a lot of a lot of people have had to go to functional medicine people or other people to get.
Yes.
So
Yes. More naturopath or functional medicine.
ask around in your community about where you can get it. And it's very, once you get on something that you're stabilized on, it's great. You just continue on it.
Right. Let's pivot a little bit. I love you have something in the book. Well, of course you talk about exercise, which is near and dear to my heart. I've been exercising all my life, and you have this thing in the book about your butt squeezes, and it cracked me up because I used to travel all the time when I was in the corporate market, and I didn't have a lot of time with the travel schedule to exercise. I used to do like a whole little mini isometric exercise on the planes where I would squeeze my butt, squeeze my arms, squeeze my thighs and whatnot. So when I saw that in your book, I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do that.
I've been doing this forever.
I
know.
know. I love squeezing my butt.
Yeah.
But what I love that you said about exercise, and this maybe get some people off the couch that don't normally exercise, is that it actually has the same effects as an antidepressant. And I didn't realize that, but I do realize that now that makes sense, because when I don't exercise, I don't feel really good mentally or emotionally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've known for a long time that exercise is equal to a lot of antidepressants for people. And that, I think of this, ladies, so as you're going through into the upgrade, think of your whole body and brain as like a little 3-legged stool. For stability, you need to have all those 3 legs really solid. One of those legs is exercise, muscle. The other one is sleep, and the other 3rd leg is nutrition. So those things have to be feeding your brain and body to keep you all functioning as the best as you can. So that's very, very important.
I love that you mentioned sleep. That is extremely important, and that's an issue I've always been like a light sleeper, and now I'm not sleeping well, and I like my 7 or 8 hours, but I don't always get that. Give us some tips on sleep that some of the women can incorporate into their daily lives.
And on page 82, I give something called Louann's sleep plan, so you can look at the sleep plan and kind of see where you can diddle it up. So remember that most of us don't realize, and the scientists have discovered in the last few years, is that in the brain, when you sleep, all of these neurons that have been chattering, they're up close in each other's space, all overlapping with each other. When you sleep, they all kind of shrink back from each other and leave these little channels in between, where the brain can like hose down all of the used up trash from the day, and it just hoses out and cleans out the whole brain while you sleep. But if you don't sleep or don't sleep enough,
you don't get the rejuvenation of that.
The garbage doesn't get hosed out of your brain. So it's a real physical thing. These all trashy proteins that we get all used up get thrown everywhere during the day, and you need to get them hosed out. So you really need to get, and some of the really easy basic things are like, do you get up in the morning and get bright light, get bright light in your eyes sort of first thing in the morning for at least 10 or 15 minutes. The bright light resets your entire 24-hour cycle. It's like pushing the reset button on something, like pushing the 24-hour timer, like boom.
And also, are you sleeping with no light, right? Because you want to make sure that you've got the darkness during the sleep time. Yeah.
With no light. I sleep with a face mask, and I also sleep with like, I sleep, we live on a pretty busy street, but so I sleep with these types of earplugs that are custom made earplugs. And they are about 100 to 150 dB. They count out. The little orange ones that you use take about 28 to 35 decibel levels. These take out 100 to 150. So if you have whatever it is that's like
What are they called? How do people
um,
find them? They're called.
like these are made by West Phone. I mean, you can just look up custom earplugs, and they're you just basically you just they go in, you make you a mold, they do a little mold in your ear and then send it off to the company and they make them for you. I don't know, you can get them for, I mean, they're about $100.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they've lasted me for 20 years. I know, and they're indestructible. And I
Yeah,
just
I think noise is a big issue. I live on a busy street too. I tend to close the window sometimes when
but
I really
these
want that window open, right?
These are
Yeah.
magic. These are magic. We live right on the water too, so the Coast Guard boat used to come park right outside our house.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be always calling the Coast Guard station saying, "Would you please get your guys to park somewhere?"
I'm
Now
sure
I
they
know.
love that. I'm
No,
sure
I know.
they're like, who's this
I
crazy
know
woman calling?
my brother's a fisherman, so he told me how to call the sector commander for my area. But it was like, and they came and measured. Wait, it was a whole thing. Then I discovered these, and these are my magic, my secret weapon. So now you guys are the only ones who know my secret weapon or my little plug. So you get those. So you got to get the sound down. The temperature should be about 68 degrees to 70
Mm-hmm.
max in your room, and your eye shades so dark. And then as soon as you get up, you get some bright light. And ladies, I know the two things I'm going to tell you next, for most of you, are going to be things you may not quite be ready for. But I have given both of these up for various reasons. But when you drink caffeine in the morning, all of us, I mean, we're so addicted, we don't even realize how
Mm.
addicted we are to our caffeine. And first, because I was having some stomach problems, I had to go off caffeine for a couple of years. And all of a sudden, because I was always telling my patients, don't drink any caffeinated things after 12 noon,
Right, right.
12 noon. Most of us can do that. So
Yeah.
at least ladies start there, or just switch to decaf at noon or whatever it is. So start there. But I discovered that once I went off, it's like I go completely down 7.5 hours later. I haven't even moved when I get out of the bed. So that's new for me, because it's like, anyway, you will sleep a lot better if you take all caffeine out of your life. And
Mm-hmm.
the nighttime, taking alcohol at bedtime is very
Mm.
bad. And
Mm.
even having, 2 glasses of wine at dinner at 8 o'clock is going to screw your sleep up for the rest of
Mm.
the night.
I try not to actually eat or drink anything after 7 p.m.
Oh, that's
Unless
wonderful.
I'm out, at a dinner or whatnot. Of course, you can't avoid that. But I just try to stop doing stuff after 7. I could never sleep with a full stomach, and especially alcohol after that time
Yeah,
period.
and alcohol, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but alcohol used to I get a little heart flutter sometimes,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's not good for your heart either. But
I
anyway,
find that I can't drink as much alcohol as I used. Not that I was ever a heavy drinker, but I could kind of milk a half a glass of wine through dinner and I'm good.
yeah,
And then I'll have the taste, but I don't have to overdo it. I don't have to overdo.
yes, that's brilliant. That's
Yeah.
great. I endorse that. That's really great, because
Yeah.
you just can't, so, uh, look at you want those garbage things to be hosed out of your brain at night. So you just, whatever you have to do to get good sleep. And the sleeping pills, a lot of us, I mean, when I had to travel, I mean, you travel time zones, and everybody has to do what works for them.
Hmm.
But they really mess up your brain function and your memory, even though you don't know it's doing it. It's
Even like melatonin or something like that.
too much melatonin can make people depressed. So
Interesting.
I'm really careful with melatonin, unless you have a diagnosed sleep disorder that requires you to take melatonin. You
Hmm.
might be a little cautious with it. And actually,
Okay.
they have the over the counter 3 milligrams and stuff. That's too much. You want maybe point
One,
point
one
five
or
one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the social aspect, which is really important. I mean, here we are talking girl to girl, woman to woman kind of thing. And I know for me, I wrote this article once, and I think I have it on my blog on my site, called Blurry Vision and Dry Vaginas. And it's all about, when I was going through a lot of these changes, how important it was to talk to my friends, to talk to my girlfriends, and find out, hey, what's working for you, what's not. Do you have a good doctor, this, that, and the other thing. That's the social aspect is really important, especially in this area where people feel like they don't, traditionally it's not been an area where, women like to talk about, and now it's kind of like out there. What do you feel about that?
To talk, they don't like. I think that um, Like
Well,
the
how important is
so,
that
but so
socializing?
the sexual thing and talking about, flooding and bleeding all over things. I mean, you can talk about these things after you know how it's like you can talk about stuff after they've had, you look back and
Yeah.
you've got some solution, but I don't know what it is. And I think that women talking with each other about something that relates to aging or something, it really doesn't, I don't know. We women, I don't know. Some girlfriends or sisters or people will talk about it with each other, and it's great to have someone to go to get what we all
Well,
have.
also to not feel like you're alone, right?
You're not
Yeah,
alone, and
yeah.
it's like learning the tricks from each other. I say the phrase, we all walking each other home, through the different stages of our life, and you need to know you're not alone.
Right.
More than anything, you need to know you're not alone. One of the reasons I wrote the book is I wanted women to see. I put a lot of women's stories in it. I mean, and you don't need any science to read this book, right, Debbie?
Oh, yeah, no, it's very, very interesting throughout. Although you do have a lot of science in it, which helped me learn a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to have it be something that goes down easy, though. It's like whatever. It's not because you don't want to. It's not nice to struggle with things. But so there's so much that we want to teach each other and talk to each other about with our girlfriends. And this is really kind of a girlfriend's book. It's a girlfriend's book.
It really is. I love, and I'm going to end our interview with a quote that you have in the book that I actually wrote down. And I think that sort of sums it up. And that is, age wrinkles your skin, loss of enthusiasm wrinkles your soul, which is so important for me and hopefully for our listeners too, because it speaks to just being that, having that inner light and having the enthusiasm and purpose and not worrying about the outer appearance as much as you did, and being in a place in your life where you don't have to worry about that as much anymore.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Louann, for your presence here today. And I'm going to hold up the book. Well, you want to hold up the book? Let's hold it up.
Oh, we can do it together.
Yay,
Girlfriend. This is the girlfriend's book.
The upgrade. I love it. I love it.
Girlfriend's book. Okay.
Well, listeners, you can find links to connect with Dr. Louann, listen to this podcast or others, or sign up for free programs on selfpowernow.com/guide. I wish you all a wonderful day. Come back and join us next time. Ciao. Thanks for listening to Self Power Now. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with others, follow it on your favorite podcast platform, and join our community on selfpowernow.com and receive 3 free happiness gifts. And while you're there, if you're looking for more ways to be happy, healthy, peaceful, and loved, check out my books and new online courses. Until next time, this is Debbie Jasoni wishing you self-power now.